Kitty Werthmann, who earlier lived under the Nazis and then later under the Soviets in occupied Austria. After living in America with her husband, who was a physician, and raising a family, Kitty became aware of the many changes taking place here in the land of the free, which were basically the same as what she had experienced under fascism and communism in Austria. So she became active as a lobbyist for pro-family values in South Dakota. In 1985, Kitty went undercover with many so-called American peace marchers at the Reagan-Gorbachev summit held in Geneva, Switzerland, where she met with several communist leaders from Hamburg, Germany, who divulged their plan to invade the United States from Mexico. Kitty, welcome to Sound Off.
Thank you very much. Good evening.
Good evening, Kitty. Before we discuss the planned invasion of the U.S. from Mexico, please briefly share some of your earlier background with our listening audience.
Well, I lived for 7 years under Hitler's cruel regime, and after World War II, 3 more years under communist Soviet occupation. I came to the United States in 1950 and became a naturalized American citizen, which I'm very, very proud of. This freedom in the United States is the biggest gift what anybody can have, and we don't dare lose it.
Yes, I agree. Most of us here in America are still unaware that Mexico has a Marxist socialist government, which is very...
A gunfight between Mexican drug cartels and U.S. law enforcement along the Rio Grande River today has injured 3 suspected drug runners. As a result, a binational multi-agency investigation is now underway. News Center 23 reporter Josh Navarro reports.
Well, that shooting between U.S. law enforcement officials and drug cartels happened here along the Rio Grande River earlier this morning. It happened upstream from where I'm standing here at Chimney Park in South Mission. The boats behind me that you see belong to the Texas Game Warden. They were fired upon. Officials with the Department of Public Safety say it started when law enforcement officials were participating in a multi-agency Texas Ranger recon operation today when they spotted a suspicious vehicle on the U.S. side of the river, along with 2 drug cartel recovery boats. Officials say that these 3 patrol boats tried to intercept the cartel boats, but as they approached them, the agents came under heavy gunfire from the Mexican side of the border. 3 suspected drug runners were injured during the gunfight. No word if any U.S. law enforcement officials were hurt during the battle. Also, no word if any drugs were seized. DPS say authorities in Mexico were notified about the abandoned cartel boats and were on scene of the shootout. Reporting from the Rio Grande River, I'm Josh Navarro, KVEO News Center 23.
Our border, but now the U.S. Border Patrol is warning its agents to look out for Mexican military units. You heard me right. Mexican military units on American soil that could be a threat to their life. With me now, the reporter who broke that story, Sarah Carter, from the Inland Valley Daily Bulletin. Thank you so much for being with us, Sarah. Talk about this story that you stumbled across. You were just doing reporting on immigration work, and you uncovered a bombshell. Talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I spent the last year covering our border, both the southern border in Mexico and the northern border out here, all the way from San Diego into Arizona. And one of the things that I had heard often was from Border Patrol agents is these incursions, Mexican military crossing our border, assisting drug smugglers, and also human smugglers across the border. I heard this over and over again, and not only from the Border Patrol agents, but also from the immigrants themselves, who would hide on the other side of the border before they made their run from these drug smugglers and from the Mexican military. So it began an investigation for me that started late last year, actually early last year into late last year, when I was able to uncover the documents.
And Sarah, you're saying that the Mexican military is actually crossing into America repeatedly?
I'm not only saying that, I believe I know that. I believe the documents prove that. These documents show 216 incursions over the last 10 years of Mexican military into the United States. And just today, I received information from a chief deputy actually out in Hudspeth County, Texas, and the FBI confirmed today that Mexican military incurred at 3 o'clock this afternoon in Texas into the United States, assisting drug smugglers, and I was able to confirm that before I got on the air with you tonight, Joe.
It's a stunning story, and we have here Mexican military incursion. A lot of people along the border would say it's a military invasion. Let me bring in T.J. Bonner. Stay with me, Sarah. T.J. is the president of the National Border Council. T.J., Sarah says there have been over 200 incursions into the United States by Mexican military units. Does that number sound about right to you?
Actually, it sounds a bit low, Joe. It happens on an all too frequent basis, and it's not just an innocent geographical blunder where they come across and go, oops, we'd better turn around. They have fired upon our Border Patrol agents on several occasions, striking 2 of our agents just last year.
Why are they shooting at our agents?
Because our agents are standing in the way of them getting drugs into this country.
And what's our federal government doing about it? Has the State Department stepped forward and made a protest? Has the Department of Homeland Security talked about this issue as being a great threat to America and certainly its Border Patrol?
They're pretty silent on this issue, Joe. We complained vocally after a 2000 incident where 16 soldiers chased our agents around, fired shots at them. All we got back from the White House was a form letter thanking us for raising concerns about water boundary issues. No one ever followed through and did anything on these issues. And, you know, then 5 years later, we had our agents shot up by Mexican military down in Tucson, Arizona.
Well, it's unbelievable, TJ. And Sarah, is this happening because the Mexican military is really in the pockets of some of these drug cartels that operate along the border?
Yeah, you know, let me begin by telling you I've spent time in quite a few of the border towns, and I heard that over and over again. If you go into Agua Prieta or if you go into Sasabe, Mexico, even out here in San Diego along the borders, you'll hear that over and over again from the people that actually live in those communities. A lot of them are poverty-stricken communities, and most of the migrants huddle, you know, in the canyons and such near those communities. They'll tell you that they see them doing this. The cartels pretty much run the border towns, from what I gather, and many reporters have been killed on the other side. You know, they get too close to these stories. But at this point in time, I think, you know, like what TJ said, you know, our State Department hasn't acted on this. I'm continuing to follow these stories. And like I said, today, the FBI was able to confirm where Mexican military were crossing the Rio Grande today, and they were actually 200 yards in across the river with mounted machine guns pointed at our Border Patrol agents, at our chief deputies, at Hudspeth County deputies, and as well at the Texas Highway Patrolmen. So it's interesting that the State Department doesn't mention this or that Chertoff downplays this, but I think it's a very serious issue, and I believe that the cartels are able to buy out some of the Mexican military personnel that are along the border.
I'll tell you what, Sarah Carter, thank you so much for this report. It is very frightening. TJ, thank you for being with us. I know a lot of Americans very concerned tonight that, as you said, this continues to happen. It happened today, and our federal government doesn't seem to be interested in it. Obviously, there needs to be an investigation on Capitol Hill. I'm going to be talking to my friends in Congress that have been concerned about this issue, and we're going to demand an investigation, and we're going to demand action. They can't keep coming into our country and shooting at our Border Patrol. Coming up.
But Kitty, please tell us more about the planned invasion of the United States from Mexico and how you came about finding this information.
In November 1985, I had the opportunity to go to Geneva, Switzerland, to the summit conference between President Reagan and Gorbachev. My task was to help to accommodate the American women who would go over there to support President Reagan on his Star War project.
Yes.
My other task was to infiltrate the peace movement, which was coordinated from America and Europe to support Premier Gorbachev. I went in disguise to join the Peace March, which was actually coordinated in the English Garden in Geneva. My disguise was a hippie-like clothing, also with peace buttons, and one button especially was designed Physician for Social Responsibility. That is the left wing of the American Medical Association. And as we assembled there was a huge crowd from America and Europe. Many Hollywood personalities were there. One especially I recognized as Barbara Boxer, who is a senator today. Jesse Jackson, other movie stars, and of course the late Congresswoman Bella Abzug. I actually marched with Bella Abzug and Jesse Jackson to the Hotel Hilton, where the press conference took place. As we arrived there, we were greeted by a German woman who had a seat in the German government by the Green Party. Surprise! Bella Abzug greeted the German woman in fluent German, saying, "I have a big surprise. We have a private meeting tomorrow with Premier Gorbachev." Since I'm fluent in the German language, I carefully listened what they said. Also, a huge room was provided for the press conference, the ballroom of the hotel, with a huge buffet, everything from caviar, lobster, you name it. As I looked around the room, as I walked in there were about 8 or 10 people standing around, and they were not part of the peace movement, of the peace march. And they were all very disheveled, muddy boots, torn clothing, and I wondered where those people came from. So I looked around and I found one woman standing in the corner. She was the only one who smoked, and that's why she was far off in a corner. And I approached her and I said, "I didn't see you people at the Peace March. How come?" She looked at my buttons and she said, "Oh, you are one of us. And I said, "Well, certainly, I said, "I was part of the Peace March." And I said, "How come you weren't there?" So she said, "Well, we couldn't be seen publicly on the street." And I said, "Well, why not? Everybody else is there. Everybody under the sun is there." Well, she said, we could not come in legally. And I said, why not? Well, she said, Switzerland is very neutral, and we are all members, the people standing around there, of the German Communist Party. We are from Hamburg. Oh, I said, this is very, very interesting. Tell me more about it. This is very, very interesting to me. So she said, well, right now we want to take Nicaragua. And I said, and what else? She said, then we go into Honduras, meaning spreading their communist philosophy. And then we will be in Mexico. And I said, Mexico? That's such a poor, corrupt country. Why would you want to go to Mexico? What really makes you think that you can accomplish something in Mexico? She said, that is going to be our future base. I said, base for what? Then she said, then we called back the territory what the United States stole from us. And she rattled off California, Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, part of Colorado, and on and on. And I said, well, really, you know, if you're going to do this, you need a lot of support. You need a lot of people. You cannot say 1, 2, 3. You're going to have to give us back our territories, what the United States stole. She said, oh, she said, this is not going to be a big problem for us. She said, your churches are going to do the work for us. And I said, our churches? She said, oh yes, your churches are hard at work on that. Well, it dawned on me, it hit me like a ton of bricks. And it dawned on me very quickly that, for a long, long time, I have been reading in church publication about the sanctuary movement. You know, the sanctuary movement meant all these people coming over the border illegally, and the churches would house them and feed them, and then sort of turn them over to the welfare system of the United States. And I thought, I cannot believe that. I cannot believe that, what that woman was telling me. So I said, oh, when is this event supposed to take place? And she said, well, it all depends who your president is. It could be in 2004, 2006, 2008. It all depends who is going to be your president.
That's very interesting, Kitty.
Scary.
Very scary.
Scary.
Now, what I'm wondering, are only Mexican nationals going to be involved, as we have already experienced in the form of illegal aliens over the past decades? Or will there be outside assistance from Cuba, China, and Russia? Was anything mentioned about that?
She didn't mention anything, but she said, we have our people on a...
What you're witnessing is Mexico under fire. Oh, dude! I don't know. Another day in Mexico. See, is Mexico under fire at the border? Here we are.
Interesting. Well,
What I believe that they are using people from Central America. You know, there are, like in El Salvador,
yes.
there's a big communist movement there. It always was there. And of course, in Nicaragua, the same way, you know. These people are all ready and waiting. What eventually will happen? It will be a revolution.
Yes, I'm afraid so. Well,
it's going to be on YouTube, dude. I'm putting this on YouTube. America's going to see this war on drugs up front and close. The stuff they don't put on the news. I don't want to get too close because I don't want to get shot. But I can record the sound effects.
The Cold War is not over. Communism is very much alive. The one worlder are not sleeping. They're working very hard. And the very idea about the security and prosperity partnership of North America
yes.
is the very blueprint what they intend
I think I'm going to put that off right now.
to do. The European Union is actually the blueprint for one world government. 27 countries in Europe joined the European Union. And the people actually were tricked into that because they were being promised economic prosperity, and also it would be so nice to have a common currency and open borders so you could travel very freely without a passport, and you don't need to exchange money for wherever you want to go. So a common currency, the euro, would be so nice, much less problems exchanging, go to the bank and exchange money and so on. The people did not realize that they were being tricked. The fact is, it was a money devaluation. I was in Europe this last April, and I interviewed many people in Austria and in Germany. What actually happened in 2002, I would say, after the German marks and the Austrian shilling were abolished, the people were being told it would make no difference. Everything would be the same. It would take about 6 months to get everything in proper order, and people who were retired, they had an excellent pension plan, you know, lived very well.
Yes.
And after 6 months, when everything was in proper line, they discovered that their pension was only worth 50%. Because the euro, actually, the German mark was devaluated, as well as the Austrian shilling.
Yes.
So I explain it in very simple terms. If you went to a restaurant when the German mark was still in effect, you could have a very good meal for 15 German marks. Now, under the euro, you pay 15 euros, which equals 30 German marks, double the price.
I see.
Also, the people discovered that their bank account was only worth 50% devaluated. So, people who worked hard all their lives and they had a good pension, they were telling me that they cannot afford to live in their condos or in their apartments because their pension does not reach that far. So many people live now in public housing and on food stamps. It created a poverty amongst senior citizens. They never thought that would happen. Also, a lot of the prices, what you paid in German marks, were adjusted into euros.
Yes.
So you pay double. In many stores, you would go in there, and I usually go over there once a year, and I remember what the prices were in German marks. It's now the same in euros. Double.
The story you're about to see was blacked out by France's politically correct media. What was it? A patriotic march for French values and culture and against radical Islam. Dale Hurd reports from Paris.
They chanted against Islamic fascism and about the French victory over Arab invaders in 732. It was the first march of its kind in France.
A broad coalition of groups from across France have come together because they feel like they're losing their country to radical Islam, Sharia law, and a politically correct establishment that encourages the spread of Islam.
Sharia law is slowly enforced in our countries, and we want to march here to protest against that because our government is doing nothing.
French people, they want to defend their culture, their history. They are called fascists.
I think it's not only a problem of France. It's a problem of Europe. It's a problem also of USA.
There was no visible counter-demonstration, but an egg managed to hit one reporter.
I was just hit with an egg, standing with protesters.
The march happened just weeks after a group of French young people called Generation Identitaire stormed a mosque in Poitiers and hung a banner from it, demanding a referendum on Muslim immigration. France has more Muslims than any other European nation. Some believe there could be as many as 15 million Muslims in France, although the official figure is much lower. Noted French writer Renaud Camus helped organize the march.
What I call le grand remplacement, the big replacement, the change of population, is the biggest thing which has happened in French history since 15th century.
The leftist French media ignored the demonstration, viewing it as racist, but it's clear the movement to resist radical Islam is growing in France. Dale Hurd, CBN News, Paris.
Now let's set the record straight. There's no argument over the choice between peace and war, but there's only one guaranteed way you can have peace, and you can have it in the next second. Surrender. Admittedly, there's a risk in any course we follow other than this, but every lesson of history tells us that the greater risk lies in appeasement. And this is the specter our well-meaning liberal friends refuse to face, that their policy of accommodation is appeasement. And it gives no choice between peace and war, only between fight or surrender. If we continue to accommodate, continue to back and retreat, eventually we have to face the final demand, the ultimatum. And what then? When Nikita Khrushchev has told his people he knows what our answer will be. He has told them that we're retreating under the pressure of the Cold War, and someday, when the time comes to deliver the final ultimatum, our surrender will be voluntary, because by that time, we will have been weakened from within spiritually, morally, and economically. He believes this because from our side he's heard voices pleading for peace at any price, or better read than death, or as one commentator put it, he'd rather live on his knees than die on his feet. And therein lies the road to war, because those voices don't speak for the rest of us. You and I know and do not believe that life is so dear and peace so sweet as to be purchased at the price of chains and slavery. If nothing in life is worth dying for, when did this begin? Just in the face of this enemy? Or should Moses have told the children of Israel to live in slavery under the Pharaohs? Should Christ have refused the cross? Should the patriots at Concord Bridge have thrown down their guns and refused to fire the shot heard round the world? The martyrs of history were not fools. And our honored dead, who gave their lives to stop the advance of the Nazis, didn't die in vain. Where then is the road to peace? Well, it's a simple answer after all. You and I have the courage to say to our enemies, there is a price we will not pay, there is a point beyond which they must not advance. Winston Churchill said the destiny of man is not measured by material computations. When great forces are on the move in the world, we learn we're spirits, not animals. And he said there's something going on in time and space and beyond time and space, which, whether we like it or not, spells duty. You and I have a rendezvous with destiny. We'll preserve for our children this, the last best hope of man on earth, or we'll sentence them to take the last step into 1,000 years of darkness.